So we have two main activities that we want to do this week. One is to issue, which we'll see the link in shortly, the climate action survey, which will go out, and students, you will see that survey twice, once at the beginning and once at the end. But we would like everyone to fill it out, including the faculty and the Yay Fellows. Second is we're going to introduce the concept of reflective journaling. And we have some temporary questions that we have that I'll show you online. And then we'll do our team, SDG team updates, which Sarah W. will do. And then lastly, again, we have more slides than we have time for, but an important update with the start of the UN General Assembly next week. And what is really wonderful for all of the students on the call is that the UN General Assembly is virtual, which means now, for the first time, it's actually fairly easy to watch what's going on, to line up. So we're actually going to encourage most of you, if you're interested, to go ahead and register before the queues fill up. There's no cost, there's no fee, and there's a lot of really cool activities going on. And then lastly, we're going to close out this session with the breakout rooms. So we'll go back into our SDG teams. Note, we did have to move everyone around a little bit. Again, our goal is for evenly distributed students among the teams. And we also want to make sure that you're working on a team with mostly peers from another institution. I mean, there'll be some overlap, but the goal is for peers from another institution. So next slide. So the climate action survey, we'd like everyone to take. You can take it from this link here. It takes you about 15 minutes or a little longer to complete. We do ask that you spend the time to be thoughtful and complete it as much as you can, and hit that submit button by September 30th. So you do not need to do it during class today, but we do need to get this done by the 30th of September for all of the classes. So Sarah H., I know you heard about this on Monday. Javier for the rest of your students, and then as the bigger classes come in, we will make sure they get that survey link. Next slide. So on reflective journaling, this is an important part of our evaluation process. And what we will start to do in the next couple of weeks is make sure we have some writing time for everyone to sort of stop and think and write. That will mostly be in your team structure. And the idea of reflective journaling is just your own journey from point A to point B. And this is an important part of our evaluation for the project. So we put some sample questions so you get a sense of the tone and familiarity of reflective journaling. It's good practice on writing. You will ask the same questions each week. So it's just tracking your progress as you move through this class. There are no right or wrong answers. It's just your own personal goal for each week, how your teams go. Are you feeling engaged? Or are you not feeling engaged? And those types of questions. So we will set those up with the Yay Fellows and ask that they will sort of check that their team members do a little bit of reflective journaling each day, each time you meet. Usually 10, 15 minutes is a good enough time to write some quick answers. Next slide. So Sarah G, sorry, Sarah H. Oh my goodness, Sarah W, the trident of Sarahs. Sarah W, turning this over to you.
Thanks, Gillian. Okay, so last week, we had a lot on SDG 13, climate action, and while Sarah Green and Macy are both two wonderful people, we had to do some shuffling around of folks. So this is the updated SDG team list, and for those that are joining for the first time, La Molina students affiliated with Javier, we encourage you to sign up for one of these SDG teams, and we can talk about that in a little bit more detail, just so you're comfortable with joining the teams and things like that. But this is now organized just to make sure that we have a pretty equal distribution of institutions as well as professors and fellows within each of the SDG teams. Just a heads up for 14-15, when you're in your breakout rooms today, I would encourage you to have a rough breakdown of who would be willing and interested in splitting into SDG 14 versus SDG 15, as that team will probably split pretty soon as we join more classes in. So just keep that in mind. And for those that are just joining for the first time, as Gillian's saying, if you have a preferred SDG, if you want to put that in the chat box, just let me know so I can put you in the right breakout room. Otherwise, we can have that conversation once we start those breakout rooms. And this is available on that Google Sheet that everyone that's on Slack at least has access to. So if you forget what team you're on or anything like that, which hopefully you don't, you have access to that throughout the semester.
Okay, any questions?
Gillian.
I was going to say, any questions for Sarah W. before we go on? Again, we want to spend a fair amount of time in our breakout rooms. So it's important that everyone who's on the call has a room to go to. So if you could put in your chat box what your preferred one is. And for the new students joining, the key is to go back and look at the Sustainable Development Goals and decide which Sustainable Development Goal as associated target you're most interested in. We do need to target that we split teams from different universities. So all the new La Molina University students need to shift among the different STGs and not all in the same. Okay, so for today, let's just put in our chat box what our preference is, and then we will add you to those rooms so you can actually join the breakout rooms today. So let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the General Assembly, and again, making sure we get everyone up to speed on where we are sort of going in the structure of the UN, and also in part because the General Assembly is starting next week. And for the first time pretty much ever, we actually have the opportunity to join in a lot of the activities next week of the General Assembly. And what I would just sort of want to preface this is there's going to be a lot of details about the UN's organization, because I think it's very important to understand where things sit in the UN. The UN is an enormous organization. But also this gives you the chance to actually see international negotiations in action, to be part of the world stage conversation. There are several things that are opening up for registration for free for the first time ever. So I certainly encourage all of you who are interested in international work through this class or others to sign up and register for some of the open events, and to do that pretty quickly, because we do not know if they're going to put a cap on the number of people who can participate. So I went ahead and registered for a whole bunch of things for exactly that reason, because I didn't know if there would be a cap. So we will have those links in the slide deck, but you can also, the UN's website is very good. And as Sarah G suggested, you can follow them on Twitter, and they have all these links posted in their Twitter feed as well as on their website. Next slide. So just a quick reminder, and again, the slide is on your slide deck. I know it's not very easy to read, but the important thing to highlight is that there are 7 main, what are called organs or organizations, but they call them organs within the UN system. And those 7 organs work in very different ways. That's important when you're looking at the implementation of something at the global scale. So the principal organs, the number 1 is the General Assembly that meets next week. That is the place where all nations have a voice and all nations speak. In contrast, another organ within the UN is the Security Council. And the Security Council only has 7 permanent members, and it votes by majority, while the General Assembly votes by consensus. And what's also interesting about the Security Council, which you've probably heard on the news, is that it only takes 1 member to veto. So there is veto power in the Security Council for actions to stop. And very often you see debates between, usually it's the US and Russia, who are permanent members, along with sanctions, and one will vote against the other to prevent a sanction from moving forward. The biggest organ of the UN is the Economic and Social Council, commonly known as ECSOC in UN speak. And why that's important is because ECSOC answers to the Secretary General of the UN. It is an implementation arm of the UN. It does stuff. The General Assembly makes decisions. So but the lingo is the General Assembly decides, ECSOC implements. So you'll see when you look through this table at your leisure, lots of things like UNICEF, UNESCO, the Climate Change Convention, Convention of Biodiversity, all sit under ECSOC. The exception, and why this is important, is that the Sustainable Development Goals sit under the General Assembly. So you see there are a couple other organs, International Court of Justice, Trustee Council, which actually has now gone away. There are no more trustee countries. That was left over from colonialism and from World War II. So the Trustee Council no longer really is functional. International Court of Justice is where you see a lot of human rights violations, etc. Next slide. So I just wanted to put that in context. So you remember that the Sustainable Development Goals move with the General Assembly. The climate change negotiations, the Paris agreements are under ECSOC. So there are two different places within the UN structure. So the UN decides at the General Assembly by consensus. And it's important to recall that the Sustainable Development Goals come out of a over 20-year process from Rio 1992 to what was known as Rio +20, the two Earth summits that both took place in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. So from Rio +20, the Sustainable Development Goals came together in a document known as The Future We Want. And by 2015, so it took several years, it was distilled down to the 17 goals that you are all assigned to teams based on one of those goals, and 169 targets within those 17 goals. So you see there's quite the sweep. Next slide. And again, I'm going through a little bit quickly, being mindful that you have the slides available, but also to give us enough time for our breakout rooms to be productive. So just to give you an example, the UN General Assembly adopts by consensus. The Human Rights Declaration is probably one that you're all fairly familiar with. It gives you the guiding principles to overarching actions within the UN. So the Sustainable Development Goals do the same thing. It's this overarching action, but it's important to note, and I noticed the slide got a little bit cut off, that the Sustainable Development Goals include entities that are not countries. So the UN allows membership to basically 3 entities, the Palestine territories and the Holy See, are two of the main entities who are not necessarily countries, but they do have rights to vote in the General Assembly, and they are represented in the General Assembly. Next slide. Okay, so it's important to remember is in 2020, which is this year, on Friday, which is tomorrow, the UN will be convening the first ever what's known as the Sustainable Development Goals moment. So I put that in the slides. There should be a clickable link. If not, we have another link further down that you can actually look to see what these moments are. And the idea is to highlight different sustainable development goals and what is our progress and what is our target as a world. So these are worldwide goals. So it might be really interesting to log in tomorrow, see which goal they're talking about. Oh, thank you. It looks like SDG 4. Oh, sorry, that's just a preference. Which goal they will be talking about tomorrow and which one will be highlighted. And Karina, I think we need to send that to Sarah W. I'll write that. Sarah W. Karina would like to be in SDG 14. Okay, next slide. So the other important thing to remember what's happening with the UN General Assembly this year is that there are three, not really mini summits, but three summits going on in time with the main General Assembly. And if you may recall from the news, last year was the Youth Summit, was a big summit. And several years ago, there was a big Earth Summit on climate change summit that had protests in the streets of New York and a big rally in the streets of New York around the General Assembly. So this year there are three. And what's important for this class, and mostly important for when Andrew's class joins in, is there's one big biodiversity summit that will take place on the 22nd through the 24th. And again, hopefully you can, right now the registration is not open for that, but you can follow that biodiversity summit. And for those of you interested in SDG 5 or SDG 4 on education, the Fourth World Conference on Women's Issues is being hosted by UN Women at the same time. And the best way to keep track of all these things, as Sarah Green mentioned, is through Twitter. Follow the Global Goals UN on your Twitter account, and they are really good about sending updates. Another way to do that would be to log into their Facebook account. You'll find that the websites are not always the most up-to-date. Twitter is the fastest way to find things out on the global stage. Next slide. Okay, so what I wanted to highlight here really quickly on the UN Summit for Biodiversity, so as we are moving through our Sustainable Development Goals, what's nice about the different summits is they all have set out their objectives, their action plan, and what they hope to accomplish. You can use those to develop your own team projects. So for SDG 15 and 14, there's a set of clear objectives that have been set up by the UN, and you can look at that to see how we're looking at biodiversity at the global stage and which elements your team is interested in exploring. And so far, as I said, the link is on the bottom. I did not see that you can register yet for this summit, but as soon as that registration link opens, you should be able to join in. Next slide. Okay, so another sort of thing just to pay attention to, and this will get us towards another summit that's opening up on Friday, is just called the SDG Action Summit. It's important just to remember that the SDGs link to the climate change conference through the financial arm of the World Bank. And the World Bank's goal is to implement all of the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. And the why I like to highlight this, and we'll repeat this slide probably several times, is just that reminder that the mechanism on which countries join the Paris Agreement is this thing that's called nationally determined contributions. Some of those directly overlap with the SDGs. So for example, sustainable cities is a big one. For our colleagues from La Molina University, the cryosphere, glacier retreat, and its link to sustainable energy is a big one. The country of Peru, for the rest of you, has one of the largest dependencies on hydropower in the world, and that hydropower mostly comes from glaciers. So when glaciers retreat in the country of Peru, it has a direct impact on their sustainable energy goals and objectives. But notice that greenhouse gases will fall in a different place. So if your team is particularly interested in greenhouse gases, they may or may not directly link from a sustainable development goal to the Paris Agreement. So just be aware of that. Next slide. Okay, so our goal now is we're going to go into our breakout rooms. That was a very brief overview of where next week the UN General Assembly will be at. And again, I want to encourage everyone to take some time to look at the web pages, see what events are going on. The full program is supposed to be up by tomorrow, but it's not currently up. and take some time to sit in and listen in, see what's going on, finding out what different countries. There should be a schedule of which countries are speaking when, if you're interested in understanding what a country of interest is saying for the UN General Assembly. And then all these summits will have their schedules up shortly. So with that, if there are no questions, Sarah, I'm going to turn it back over to you to start our breakout rooms.
Yeah, and I'm going to stop share my screen because Zoom today is being weird with breakout rooms and not letting me share screen and work on breakout rooms. So Sarah Green and I have been busy chatting away at each other. So I'm going to stop share. If folks want to start communicating via Slack, and I've gotten a lot of notifications that La Molina folks have joined Slack. So if you sent me a message through Zoom chat, feel free to join the group that you're a part of. And we're going to try to troubleshoot this breakout room, hopefully within the next minute or two. I apologize for the delay.
Yeah, you should be getting a notice that you've been assigned to a breakout room when I open them. So accept that. It seems like it's working now, but we're working on it.
Well, thank you. While we wait for that moment of organization, do we have any questions regarding the upcoming General Assembly and some ideas? You can either raise your hand or just pop it in the chat box, because I can't quite see everyone's face because we have a nice turnout today. So hearing no one jumping in off the top, I'll continue talking. So the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDG action, as they call the action platform, which starts up next week, is one that I would really encourage you to sign up for. And there's a second one called the Sustainable Development Goals Knowledge Hub. Sarah Green, can I share my screen, or will that impact you guys?
I think you can, but I don't know exactly what's happening here. It's letting me assign people, but they're not actually getting put anywhere. So seems to be a glitch here. Yeah, I think you go ahead and share your screen.
Okay, so you,
yeah, if you get a notice, maybe we can't all be doing this at the same time. I don't know.
So just to show you all real quickly why they work on our technical problems, this is a group that you may want to follow. You can follow them on Twitter, or you can just ask for updates off of their hub. This is called the SDG Knowledge Hub. It has a ton of information for every sustainable development goal and what is going on currently, what different countries are doing. So I would certainly, here's a good example on the 5th Global Biodiversity Outlook. So if you're interested in SDG 14 or 15, this would be a place to take a look to see what the outlook is actually looking at and some of the results that it's come up with. You can see what they've done in the corner is the colors indicate which SDG goals tag to the topic of question. So here's a vaccine one. It includes education, good health, zero hunger, and no poverty. So the SDGs are very much interlinked. So when you join an SDG, be sure to look at all the targets within that SDG to see what it's actually doing and where the linkages might be. So let me stop sharing. So Sarah, G and W, are we sorted out yet or not yet?
So it turns
Okay,
out
so
only
now I have access. So give me like 1 minute as I shuffle.
it turns out only a full host has access to the breakouts. So Sarah W has the list of who goes where, and I had sole control of the breakouts. So in the meantime, I'm gonna, if I can, maybe I can't. No, I can't. So a different way to do this is to make everybody co-host, and then you can put yourself in and out of your own rooms. But since I don't have hosting abilities right now, I can't do that either. So handed it over to Sarah W. But because she's way more efficient than me anyway, she'll be able to get it working.
So for the La Molina team, does everyone has given Sarah W. their preferred group? I see some head nods. Okay, so I think La Molina team should be all set to join a particular group from who we can see online. So I guess this is a good time to take a stretch break. Go get yourself. Oh, I see Jorge. Did you have a hand up?
Oh, yes, thanks. I wanna be sure that like the Molina students, we need to be on the 14th and 15th group, right?
So you need to be on which one?
In the 14th and 15th one, like the life above water and life inland.
Yeah, what we're doing is we're shifting. This is because the background in range science, correct? So we are splitting students up among institutions. So you may be, let's say, for example, assigned to one of the other SDGs, and you can look at the linkage to land or a similar question, because we want to make sure that all the institutions are represented in all the different teams. So if you go back and look at the table, we split all the institutional students into many different teams because of that. Does that make sense?
Okay, thanks.
And all of the SDGs really are cross-disciplinary and cross everything. So if you're interested in oceans, whatever team you're in, your life below land or life on land or life below water, whatever team you're on will have an impact on that aspect. So they're all interrelated. So.
Okay, I'm all good to go. Thanks all for your patience. All right, well, would love to hear what folks chatted about over the, past 15, 20 minutes over Zoom in your breakout rooms. And so to switch it up, why don't we start with SDG 1617, and we'll go in reverse order, and I'll post that in the chat box as well. But, fellows or representative from your group, if you would be willing to just give a brief update, a minute or less is totally fine, as to, targets that you talked about, things like that in your breakout room.
Yeah, and I'd encourage the Yay Fellows to take a little bit of a leadership role here, because the La Molina students this is their first time attending, and welcome again. We're excited to have you on board. Just a quick reminder that next week we'll have yet another university joining in, so we will all get sort of used to welcoming our colleagues and bringing them up to speed, helping them get on Slack and get everybody up to speed.
Hello everyone, my name is Cosmole, for those of you I haven't met. In SDG 1617, we primarily went over a lot of sort of like bookkeeping stuff, assigning roles, making Google documents so that we can get some of our ideas around some of the targets and sort of directions we were thinking of organized for each other to look at and develop on. It was a really good meeting, really productive, and thankful to my awesome group.
Yes, one quick reminder, do introduce yourself and what institution you're in, because we now have several institutions. And so now we're doing SDG 1415.
Awesome. Hi, so I'm Emma from Boston University. I'm one of the fellows also with Zach, who's here too. And so we just went around, introduced ourselves, and then spoke about whether our interests lied more with the life on land or life in the water. Zach, do you want to add anything particular? You can talk about our brief thoughts.
Right now, we've spent less time. We've identified a few of the targets that we're going to look at, but mainly we've highlighted kind of a through theme of right to breathe as something that can guide our conversations about life on land and life below water. And so that kind of enables each of us to go in different directions, but also have a kind of a theme that connects our two groups.
And I would just jump in for your two groups. Do take a look at the UN Summit on Biodiversity. They have a really nice layout with objectives and goals and what the summit hopes to cover. Again, the registration is not open yet, but you might just keep an eye on that, the Global Biodiversity Summit that's coming up. And that's for all who are interested in biodiversity as well, even if your SDG is linking to it sideways.
Awesome, thank you.
Hi, I'm Macy from Indiana University, from SDG 13. In our group, we talked about some of the targets underneath SDG 13. We haven't decided on a specific one to focus on, but we were talking about making it both local, but also applicable on an international stage as well. So we got everybody added to our Slack channel, I think, so we'll continue the conversation there.
Yeah. So for SDG 12, what we did was we discussed the targets too, and we're mostly leaning towards working
Don't forget to introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry. I'm Amina Ijaz. I'm a fifth-year PhD chemistry student at Michigan Tech. Yeah, so SDG 12, what we are leaning towards working on is agrochemicals and their responsible use and their impact on the environment and how they can go through local and cross-country transport and whatnot. And we mostly introduced ourselves and we were discussing Slack, how to work on that. And before I was zapped out of the room, I was telling my team members was that we would, that I would post a summary of whatever we discuss every week. And there will be well-defined roles for every student, so don't worry about that. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Chung. I come from Colorado State University. I'm in SDG group number 11, which is sustainability cities. And because I'm the new people for join this group, and I'm the only one student in this group today. So we just briefly introduce ourselves and find the target for Goal 11, which is make cities inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. The world is becoming increasingly urbanized. So for the more the deep thing, we're gonna go next week for some other classmates join to our group. You do have some Marina students.
We do have some students from Moravian. I'm Elise Goen. I'm the fellow from Scripps Institution of Oceanography. We do have some more students joining, but I see that we don't have a whole lot. So if some people want to join in, please send me or Sarah H a message on Slack.
Cool, thanks SDG 11. Do we have any reps from SDG 9 with us?
Yes. Our group primarily spoke. We looked at the targets and saw what consensus was of the group. We did a quick—
Don't forget to introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry. My name is Allie Murphy-Paletto. I'm from Colorado State University. And our group looked at the targets and indicators, saw which ones we would like to gear towards. We're gonna keep in touch on Slack because we did have a few members missing, and then we're gonna go from there.
Thanks, Allie. SDG 4.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa. I'm from Moravian College. So I'm part of SDG 4. So while we were in our breakout room, we introduced ourselves and we also got everyone on Slack. So we also took a look at the targets. We haven't talked about anything too specific yet. We're just taking a look at them. So hopefully we can continue the conversation on Slack.
Last but not least, we have SDG 3.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm a CC student, and there we didn't have like the full team here, but Alejandro is joining SDG3, which is very exciting, and we just talked about some things that we're interested in and just like a general introduction, and adding him on Slack. But I'm also having a hard time finding Alejandro on Slack. I don't know if it's set up yet, but yeah, we're just we just did like general introduction and possibilities for moving forward.
Thank you, SDG3. So thanks to all the teams. I think that's great progress. You know, one of the, especially welcoming the new students, one of the challenges of this particular project is that we are multi-institutional, and also one of our goals is to all meet people from different institutions that share some interests and work together. So we're working towards a common goal. And so part of the role of the Yay Fellows and others is to make sure the teams can all work together, get to meet people from a different institution, and come together with a common project. So Sarah, I'm gonna actually, Sarah W., maybe let you say a couple quick things about joining Slack, and then I'm gonna close it out with some tasks for next week.
Yeah, thanks, Gillian. So if folks are still needing to join Slack, whether you're new to the team or maybe you're still a little bit confused with Slack, no worries. I just posted the invitation link within the Zoom chat box, and you can click on that and then just join Slack through that invitation link. Alternatively, if that link's not loading for you or anything like that, you're more than welcome to send your preferred email address to either Javier or myself, and I'll put my email address in the chat box as well. And that way I can get you added to the Slack workspace as quickly as possible. And then fellows, once your new students from La Molina are up on Slack, just make sure that you add them to the correct channel. You'll get a notification saying that they've joined the general channel and things like that. And so then you can just tag them to your channel, especially if it's private and whatnot.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Any questions for Sarah while we're all online? You may have to put it in the chat box again, because we have a couple of screens on our Zoom, so it's hard to see everybody. So while you think about questions, Sarah, I want to close out, and I also want to give a chance for each one of my colleagues to both introduce yourselves to the new students, but also say a little bit about our next steps. So let me start with Sarah Green, put you on the spot to introduce yourselves to our new students, and say a little bit about the project and your role in the project.
Hi, I'm Sarah Green. I am chemistry faculty at Michigan Tech University, which is way up north on the shore of Lake Superior. And I've been teaching a climate policy and science and policy class for about 5 years. I worked with Gillian on the GEO project through the UN, different story. And we teamed up last fall to take students to the COP. So that was the first year Michigan Tech students were able to go to COP. So I'm interested in the science end of things and in climate because that's the course I teach, but also broadly in the SDGs. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm going to try and keep my video on, but it might go wobbly on us again. So the GEO is the Global Environmental Outlook Report. And for La Molina students, Javier is one of the authors of the land chapter of that report. And Sarah was part of the science advisory for this same report. So it's a nice linkage there with La Molina, Michigan. I think we all met in Bangkok, right? Was it Bangkok or Guangzhou? Somewhere on the other side of the world.
Or Nairobi.
So, or maybe Nairobi. Javier, were you in Nairobi with us? I don't remember.
No, I was in Bangkok and Guangzhou.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so other side of the world. Sarah H., do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Sarah Hautzinger. I teach anthropology at Colorado College, and in the last few years have really turned my attention, even though my work has been about gender-based violence and violence in war and trauma related to those, found everything I knew about violence and trauma, still had application turning to looking at climate crisis. And I'm teaching a first-year writing course. And so I have the 3 fellows, but my 15 students will be joining us next week. And I think I'll try to get them assigned to SDGs before next Wednesday. Next Wednesday, the person that helped create this course with me, Myra Jackson, who's a permanent United Nations representative for climate negotiations, and I are going to do a short lecture on kind of how we bring together the very personal aspects of tuning the activist instrument, or tuning yourself beyond self-care on the one hand, and then all of the opportunities in very concrete policy-based terms that make it worth staying with all of this work. So pleasure to say hello to you all, and looking forward to continuing to work with you all.
Thanks, Sarah H. Javier, want to introduce yourself real quick to everyone?
Sure. Well, my name is Javier Ñaupari. I'm a professor at La Molina University at the Rangeland Ecology and Utilization Lab. I am also the director of the international office at La Molina University, and well, with Gillian, we have worked in since 2014. No, and the first contact was through Fulbright, no, Fulbright Nexus program that I joined, and have the chance to visit Colorado, Fort Collins in that year, and then she came to have some expeditions in Huascarán National Park. So since then we have worked in different activities, and now, well, happy to join this effort with the students from La Molina.
Thank you, Javier. So last but not least, what I want to do, I think Pam had to get off the call again. Pam Templar from Boston University, right, Emma? I saw her on briefly. I think she's gotten off
Yeah,
again.
she had to get off.
Yeah, I think she has a 2 o'clock conflict. I'm not sure I missed anyone. But in the interest of time, I want to do this just real quickly. Sarah Green has a question to make sure for all the groups. So this is our first set of bringing the groups together. We have 2 different groups that will come in again next week. So it's important to think about how, as you work in business, or as you heard Sarah Green, Javier, and myself working on a large UN project. I think there were 56 of us, right, Sarah G, on that project? So having yourselves organized is really important, and having a role as you move your project forward. So one of your first assignments as teams that we'd like you to have done by next week is assign roles to everyone. So you have a Yay Fellow on all teams. That person is meant to be a facilitator, a mentor to move forward. They participate on all the PI conference calls. You probably need someone, thank you, Javier, we'll see you soon, who's going to be in charge of your communication. As you all heard now, the UN mostly communicates actively through Twitter. So if you don't have someone on Twitter on your team, it might be time to open up a Twitter account, because the international stage works on Twitter more than it does anything else. We've had teams in the past use WhatsApp. WhatsApp works really well to communicate. You're in many different time zones. So it's important to have a tool other than email to communicate with. So put somebody in charge of your communication platform. Because you have a project that you need to complete in time for a global conference, you might think about different roles within to getting that project done. You need to have a researcher. You need to have someone who's good at writing, someone who's good at organizing. Sarah W. keeps my toes to the fire. She organizes everything by color, so that beautiful table is thanks to Sarah W. So you might think about that, because again, you need to move across multiple time zones and multiple universities. So it's important to have those roles really clarified. Our end goal for all the students who are new is to create something we call a story map and a poster. Those are 2 professional things that we work with quite a lot. There's a lot of information on both Slack. So getting yourself up to speed to what a story map looks like and what a professional poster looks like are 2 of the things you might want to think about. So think about those roles. I mean, and you could create more roles because you will have larger teams, but it's important that everyone have a clear idea of what their job is on a team, especially a team that may not get a chance to meet together in person. So again, I want to make sure we're clear on that. Sarah G, did you want to add anything more about this roles?
Nope, sounds good. I think it's a little bit of a moving target, so these roles will evolve and might even decide to change their names as the projects get more well-defined. But I agree that we need to give everybody a hat to wear at the start, even if it changes colors midstream.
Thanks. Sarah H, you want to add anything to the roles? We will go back into the dialogues and probably need to bring the new students up to speed on that, either on Slack or next week.
Yeah, just mention that on our way to storyboards or posters, the idea that we have is that each of these groups could convene these kind of dialogue storytelling circles where people will share experiences from their different locations and efforts. And we hope that that will generate a lot of material from which we can develop the final project, the final presentations of these projects. We talked a little bit about the Talanoa dialogues last week, and I'll say something about them again next week in our talk for the class. But you might already want to be thinking about people to recruit, people that you think have experiences relevant to your SDG or especially to specific target or targets as you're going forward.
Okay, thank you, Sarah H. So the last for the good of the order is that reminder. I'd also like by next week, if your team could narrow down which target you want to look at. There is a document that we have posted and we probably need to pin on Slack that shows the intersections among the SDGs. So for those of you who are mostly interested in biodiversity, that's one of the goals that intersects across many, many of the different Sustainable Development Goals. So take a look at those intersections, and maybe Sarah W, we can repost that so the La Molina students can see it. The nice thing about the UN is that documents are often posted in many languages. So feel free to download the copy in Spanish or download a copy in Chinese, whatever language you are comfortable within, feel free to download those documents in any language. IPCC is the same way. They have multiple translations available. So by next week, we would like you to have those roles figured out. Your Yay Fellow will be in charge of keeping that organized, and Yay Fellows, we will update you on Monday as new universities come in. And we'd like you to sort of narrow down your targets. So take some time on Slack, shoot some Slack messages back and forth. Feel free to engage both your Yay Fellows and your lead institution to figure out which target you want to go for that everybody agrees with. And with that, I know Sarah W and I actually have another class that we teach, so we'd be mindful of time at 2:15 as the close of this class. Anything else for the good of the order? Nope, so as the UN would say, hearing no objections, so this is so decided. You have your tasks for next week. Yay Fellows, we will talk to you all on Monday, and I look forward to seeing everybody next Wednesday. And once again, welcome to all the La Molina students. We're excited to have you on board with the rest of us. So everybody else, so ciao.
Ciao todo mundo.
Thank you.